What's up, guys? I am John.
And my name is Chris.
And we're the freaking heck!
Yeah!
And today we're checking out skipped content from Solo Leveling Season 2. This is Episode 7. We're a little bit behind, I know. But let's get caught up together, homies.
Yeah.
In case you haven't seen it personally. This is from AniNews. And, yeah, let's freaking get into it. Boom! And then look at freaking Jinwoo. Jeez, dude.
Yeah, there he is.
Boom!
Last episode, a lot of the cut content was mainly Sung's approach to battle. Here we have entire scenes ranging from a completely different outcome with Jinho and his father, all the way
damn.
to Detective Beck, the full conflict with Lee Minsung, and just a whole lot more with all
I was
the
wondering
other
who that
side
dude was.
characters.
Yeah, he didn't
The
get a lot
anime
of screen
clearly
time.
chooses to focus on each of the main conflicts, but what it leaves behind in exchange is the development of everything else.
Oh, God.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does lead to episodes like these seeming a little rushed. You can tell they're pushing forward purely with the intent of getting to the next conflict. So, where unlike in other episodes there'd only be minor details and scenes the anime could go without, in today's episode there'll be a lot more substance. So stick around for everything the anime left out from the novel and manhwa.
But really quick, I just gotta ask this question. If you haven't watched or if you never checked out the web novel or the manga, which I think this show is only going off of, I believe, one of the two. It's not going off of both of them. It's going off of one of the two. But if you've only seen one of, or like if you've only watched the anime, do you feel like it's skipping ahead and like pushing the pace and like any of that stuff? Or do you feel like it's doing a pretty good job of the tempo? Because I think it's doing a good job.
Yeah, I mean, so far I feel like everything's going pretty good.
I'd imagine if you read the manga or the web novel, you'd probably be like, "What are you doing, What?" But like,
Yeah.
But never seeing them, I feel like it's doing fine. Like I'm really liking the pacing.
Yeah, like
actually,
I
a lot.
mean, you don't necessarily know what you're missing, really.
Yeah.
It, like doesn't seem like you're missing much of anything until like
until you see
learn
this type of
something
stuff,
like
there's
this.
like, yeah, then you're like, "Oh my god, how did I do this?" But anyway, just watching it, it's actually like I love the pacing of it. But here we go, boom, and then freaking boom.
2 to 100 from the web novel. This episode can be divided into multiple sections, each involving their own portions of cut content, so the first would have to be focused on Lee Minsung. The anime
was
just
wondering about
glosses
this dude.
over who he is and what he was planning, but the novel really goes deep into his character and impact on Sung's assessment day.
We're about to go
So,
deep
to
inside this
clarify
dude.
just how popular Lee Minsung was, he
Deep
was
in
often
Lee
referred
Minsung.
to as Asia's top superstar.
Oh.
An iconic actor known across the globe, making this a momentous occasion simply due to how popular he was.
So was he like the
it wouldn't be an exaggeration
Timothy
to say cameras
Chalamet.
all over the
Chalamet!
world
of
were
that
him today.
era?
I
It's
feel
why
like it,
he was
dude.
in a car with the country's top news reporter, and it's also why the media was so eager to find out more from him. They
It's
all
just
wanted
funny
to
that
know his
the
plans
hunters
for
were
once
like,
he became
"We
a
don't care,
hunter.
bud."
For Lee,
Yeah.
this was all a calculated move on his part, though, since everything from the press conference all the way to tomorrow's headline was meticulously planned with the intent of making him look good. Even the guild he signed with was chosen solely with that purpose in mind. How does joining the Reapers Guild make him look good? Well, with the Reapers now just a shell of its former self, him joining painted the image he was willing to stand up for the underdogs. I had mentioned this in a couple episodes before,
Like, oh,
but
he's
the Reapers
joining
Guild
them.
always
Yeah.
seemed to be getting the
We need
short
to
end
join
of the
them.
stick lately. Before, they were once the top guild in the country, but after Chairman Go orchestrated Beck's departure into his own guild, the Reapers had lost the status it
Oh,
once
so he was
held
part
so
of the Reapers
proudly.
before. That's pretty wild.
That being the case, it was when Guildmaster Lim saw Beck and Choi fighting that he couldn't help but smile, since to him, he thought they were fighting over Lee.
Oh
For
god,
once, it
that's so
seemed
funny.
like he wasn't losing out to them. Little did he know he was actually still 5 steps behind. That's
Story
its own separate
of
conflict
my life.
involving the guilds on a larger scale, though, so to bring our focus back to Lee, he too couldn't help but smile thinking the guildmasters were fighting over him.
This is all
It was
for
meant to
me.
have
Yeah.
him step out and begin preparations for the press conference. It was then that Sung would arrive himself, leading to a bit of confusion regarding all the commotion. What I mean is that Sung knew he could have avoided it just by using stealth or entering from the back. The reason he decided not to is because this was a date and time the association reserved in advance for him. He didn't feel like he should have to avoid the front just because all these reporters were here.
Yeah.
He definitely didn't have to use the front door either, but it was just too easy to clear a path for himself. Shoving the reporters aside was no harder than moving a pillow. Because once Sung had gotten
I'm bringing him to a concert next time, getting into the barricade really easily.
This confrontation didn't go down like how we saw in the anime though, because in the novel the manager was a lot more aggressive. As a muscular D-rank hunter himself, the manager believed this to be an opportunity to embarrass what he thought was a normal person. He would shove Sung with quite a bit of force, fully intending to knock him over and even injure him. This didn't sit too well with Sung though, since if he was just a normal person trying to make their way through, then the amount of force the manager used would have injured him for sure. He could tell from the moment the manager made contact with him. Of course, Sung didn't budge at all, so now the manager was in a pretty tough situation.
He moved back from pushing him.
Like,
for real.
Sung was
His
clearly
hands hurt.
pissed and emitting an aura that dictated not to mess with him, but at the same time, the manager's boss was right behind him. This meant he could either concede, embarrass himself, and potentially lose his job, or double down, hold the line, and risk the consequences awaiting him.
Hold the
Neither were
line!
great, considering Sung's gaze was scaring the life out of him right now. That's when Chairman Go would come out himself,
Always
not
got
only
that
saving the
smile
manager
on.
from international embarrassment, but also
Welcome.
reminding Lee who it was that gave him permission to have this press conference in the first place.
God,
He
that
wasn't
guy's such a
upset that Lee
badass.
started earlier than he should have, just annoyed that he was making trouble for Sung. This was quite the peculiar situation for the press, since the chairman rarely, if ever, greeted someone in person. Even for
Okay,
the
that's pretty
employees
wild.
who'd been working with him for years, not once had they ever seen Mr. Go personally receive a guest before. It didn't matter that they were powerful businessmen or high-up officials of government, the chairman would always be greeted
That
by
aura,
them,
man. What a
not the
badass.
other way around. So, for him to be doing so now for someone so young, well, that was clearly something out of the ordinary. It made the press wonder who
sees
it was
something
the
in him.
chairman was meeting with, creating a noisy environment no longer suitable for a press conference. This obviously went to piss off Lee, since all his work was about to go up in smoke. Like, the cameras were being packed up and people leaving, so the only thing he could do to reverse it was make a statement. One that would give the press exactly what they were looking for. He knew if he shared what his future held with regards to his status as a hunter, then they were sure to stay, since that's why they were here to begin with. He just needed to start his assessment early, since to reveal his rank before that would implicate him as the manipulator he is. That's
just
when
feel
Wu
like-
would step up to stop him, leading Lee to
God.
threaten him in a way that revealed quite a bit of information about him.
That was so
As
funny.
it turns out, Lee's dad was the vice chairman of Yujin Construction. The company we know is owned by Jinho's dad, and the company that also happens to be the association's #1 sponsor. That being the case, Lee was threatening to expose the association for treating him poorly, asking if Wu and the chairman would be able to handle the fallout. Wu would simply reply with yes, fully accepting
Damn,
Lee's
look at
bluff
his
for what
eyes
it
there.
was.
The Hunter Guilds
He
are
would then
so
stare him
badass.
down with an aura far more intense in the manhwa, leading Lee to have to come up with a different plan.
Damn.
It's here the story switches over to Sung's reassessment, so to focus on what was cut from that, we first have a bit of insight on what Chairman Go was thinking. He was feeling incredibly excited, since it was just recently that Wu had recounted what Sung had done for the Hunters Guild. It was a debriefing that confirmed everything he initially thought about Sung. The way he cleared the dungeon solo without asking for anything in return really went to highlight exactly the type of person Sung was. It showed he wasn't lying when he said he just wanted to hunt monsters here. So, if he truly didn't care about anything but fighting, then Chairman Go was ready to support Sung in every manner conceivable. It wasn't often an S-rank hunter's goal lined up perfectly with the purpose of the association. Of course, Mr. Go still wished he could
there's
bring
always
Sung
something
in,
else.
but he knew doing so would just be a waste. He was well aware Sung's powers were way too strong to keep outside the dungeon. Now, aside from the fact Choi and Beck were waiting here for an hour, Sung's reassessment
Dang.
consisted of one shadow only. Well, in the manhwa he summoned everyone, but in the novel he kept it limited to his weakest soldier,
Why?
He didn't want to overwhelm the examiner with the intense pressure some of his more powerful soldiers emitted.
I would totally
That's
just
when
go
Sung
ham.
would declare
Yeah.
he could summon 100 more of them, leading the chairman to think it was 100 more of these soldiers only. With this being at most the equivalent of a B-rank hunter, that went to significantly reduce the full assessment of Sung's power here. Sure, it still
Not
made him
even
more
close,
powerful
damn.
than the entire combat force of many large guilds currently out there, but that was assuming every one of his summons was only as strong as this soldier. It didn't take into account anyone else.
Yeah,
So,
the elites.
Sung's power was
Egress,
still quite the
freaking
mystery,
the
but
named
what the
ones.
examiner saw
I
was
know,
enough
yeah.
to classify him as a mage-type hunter. The events after
kinda
the
like Slam a
assessment
little
were
bit.
pretty much the same, except when Beck had warned Sung not to leave, Sung assumed it was him implying that he would regret it. He thought they were referencing the massive offer he was leaving behind, not the sea of press waiting for him on the outside. It was a scene where his reaction in the manhwa was actually pretty funny. As for how the press ended up like this, well, that takes us to a scene from 10 minutes prior. While Sung was showcasing his abilities to the examiner, Lee was saving face making the announcement we saw in the anime. He dropped the bomb that he was retiring and made clear regardless of his rank, he would fully commit to being a hunter. This was
Yeah.
to make it seem like he cared about his people and his country, but what it really was a lie to divert attention from those complaining he was avoiding his mandatory military service. As is
Dang.
required for every adult male in South Korea, Lee was using his father's status to avoid what would normally be 2 years of conscription. So, where before the media was spotlighting something obviously terrible for his brand, this was the perfect way to reverse it. By retiring from acting and joining the Reapers Guild, not only did it make it seem like he was descending the summit just to protect the people, but it also came with a whole lot of money and the reputation of being the Reaper Guild's most famous hunter.
Massive
So,
win-win
to Lee,
there.
this was a
Jeez.
win-win-win for him.
Win-win-win.
Essentially
Shit, he
receiving
even
a
one
right
upped me
wing
on that.
guarantee against
Jeez.
criticism. It was right at the climax of his reveal, though, that reporters' phones would start to ring one after the other. They were all receiving the news of the country's 10th S rank, all while slowly piecing together it was the mystery person they saw earlier.
Nice.
As for how everyone found out so quickly,
Breaking news?
it turns out the Hunter Association uses a dedicated app to deliver important information in
Oh,
real time.
God.
Usually, the app alerted users to the location of A-rank dungeons or gates close to a dungeon break, but today the app was used to confirm Sung's status as an S-rank hunter.
That's pretty epic,
It was
though.
updated the moment Sung's new license was made. So, knowing
Even the
Sung was
license
on
has
the
a little
inside,
chip
the
thingy,
press
you know?
was now
Yeah.
trying
Damn.
to rush the building, all while Lee was stuck figuring out why no one was paying attention to him anymore.
I'm wondering if he's going to
He
be like an
even tried
important
talking
person
to
throughout the rest of the
reporter
show,
who
or if he was just
previously
used as
creating
satire right
headlines for
there.
him, but all eyes were focused on Sung now.
Because, like, to me,
So
it just
that
seems
was
like
the full extent of
some
Lee's
satire.
involvement here.
Yeah, like,
really kind of
that's a good
irrelevant.
It
question
makes sense
because
why the anime decided not to
I mean,
include everything about him, but if they did, it would have just
it
served
barely
to
means
add to the
anything
excitement.
except for
Yeah.
All he is a foil to contrast with Sung's character.
No, well, then
A
there you
point
go.
that was still made clear with the abridged version we got in the anime. Now, the next major cut content comes in the form of Jinho's conversation with his father, because not only did the anime leave several important parts of it out, it also chose to adapt it differently. What I mean is that the outcome of this conversation wasn't the same as what we saw here. To start it from the very beginning, though, it was right as they were about to start discussing Sung that Mr. Yu would receive the news about Sung himself. A phone call would leave him looking genuinely surprised, after which he would put on the news for Jinho to see. On it was a Sung
Okay.
looking very clearly annoyed. Though his face was visibly emotionless, Jinho had been around Sung long enough to know what his expressions really meant.
Yeah.
What went to shock Jinho the most, though, was the news that Sung was an S rank. Remember, Jinho only knew Sung was great. He
Yeah.
didn't know that Sung was S rank great. So,
Dang.
to see that this was what Sung's true power was, well, that was as much a shock to him as it was to everyone else.
That's cool,
He
though.
was also incredibly proud that this was a person he got to fight alongside with. Now, I don't know why the anime
Befriended.
decided not to include the real reason
Brothered.
why Sung didn't join Jinho's guild, but it's more than just wanting to fight to become stronger. Some of you may consider this a spoiler, but
Uh-oh.
if we're gonna fully understand Jinho's decision here as well as Sung's own decisions later, you definitely need to know the full context behind this. So, I'm sure this was pretty
wanna?
obvious, but the reason
We
Sung
probably-
declined is because he's planning to make his own guild. And the reason Jinho declined his father is because Sung had asked him to become Vice Guild Master. It's before Jinho would reveal his intent to accept that offer, though, that Mr. Yu would first show a rare expression of content. It was a change of face so unexpected that when it did happen, it usually spoke volumes. Here it was so strange that Jinho couldn't even look at it. Why the smile then? Well, despite Jinho not being able to secure Sung into their guild, what he achieved by befriending Sung was something his father hadn't been able to do himself yet. It was an action that fully aligned with the true intent behind the Yujin Guild's creation. An important bit of context the anime never explained to us. So, why did Mr. Yu really want to create a guild? Well, it wasn't to make more money or to compete in the industry, but was instead to protect both himself and his family.
Oh, that's cool.
In a world where hunters were growing stronger by the day, to him it wasn't enough to rely on the rule of law or government anymore. I mean, with some hunters being as strong as an entire nation's military and others ruling like kings in certain smaller countries, it was only a matter of time before a new world order was formed. At least that's what it seemed like anyway.
The wolf pack.
In order to get out of the curve before
coming
that
back.
happened, Jinho's father wanted to gather hunters he could trust. If he could put together a guild and fill it with hunters he could rely on, then that to him was the best way to protect those he cared about.
Very true.
For Jinho, such words were certainly heavy, but at the same time he couldn't help but feel happy about them. Reason being that this would be the first time his father was showing visible consideration and compassion. It was a side of him he'd honestly never seen before, one that actually looked out for the family. The smile was just the icing on the top, indicating approval towards Jinho already finding a hunter he could trust. By becoming close friends with Sung, Jinho had proved he was capable of finding hunters he could rely on. It was a test that finally made clear Jinho could run the Yujin Guild. So, with that being his to run the way he wanted, he would need to find more reliable hunters just like Sung, then turn them into people he could trust in the future.
I don't think you're going to find more like Sung.
They would without a doubt
Right.
become the most valuable assets he would end up having. It didn't matter how much money him or his father had, because the world was clearly leaning towards a new type of currency, one that was dictated by
Crystals.
power.
Yeah.
Now, this
Or
was
monster parts or
certainly a
whatever.
happy moment for the both of
Or
them,
like
but
power,
it wouldn't
maybe.
last long as Jinho had already decided to join another guild. Despite the Yujin Guild already having several S ranks in the final stages of negotiations, and despite it clearly being on the fast track to becoming the best and biggest guild in the entire country, Jinho was prepared to forego all of it for Sung. It was a decision his father was incredibly disappointed by. Nevertheless, Jinho was still happy since this was the decision he wanted to make. He had no regrets making it whatsoever. Such a decision did come with significant consequences though, because unlike how the anime states Jinho left on his own accord, his father had actually kicked him out and canceled all his bank accounts. It's not like he lived
So he
with
cut
his
him off.
parents, but the apartment he did live in was owned by his father. So Mr. Yu took away Jinho's house as well as all the money he had access to.
Oh, shit.
This
Dang,
leads
that's
to a
crappy.
completely different reaction from Jinho here, because where in the anime he shows up at Sung's place all happy and determined, in the manhwa and novel he was actually crying.
Oh,
I know I'm
God.
skipping past
It's
a
a
lot of the
huge
content
jump.
from in between these scenes, but I just want to make the whole Jinho storyline as coherent as possible.
Dang.
So Jinho would show up to Sung's asking for a place to stay, only to get the door shut in his face before he could even finish. Sung had zero intent of letting Jinho stay in the same house as his sister, instead forcing him to go and find a motel.
Yeah,
This
like-
would be until he could find some office space for his own guild, but there was very little compassion from Sung in the manhwa and novel. None of this brotherly love like how we saw in the anime.
Dang.
In fact,
Well,
Sung
that
wouldn't even
sucks.
tell
Yeah.
Jinna who it was when she asked.
Oh my
He instead
god.
opted to call Jinho a stranger he'd never met before.
Don't know that guy.
He insisted he was just some random person showing up at the wrong address. So
What does he
I
really
couldn't tell you
think
why
that dude is
myself,
gonna
but
do?
For some
Yeah.
reason, Sung really wanted to hide
I
his
don't know.
association to him.
Also, I gotta say, like, sometimes I feel like, especially because, like, they wrote the manga and the novel and stuff like that before, and then the anime, it's like an adaptation of it, and I'm sure the author has a lot of say-so in that. I feel like sometimes you can go back and look at things and be like, why did I write like that?
Yeah,
You know what I
like,
mean? And he
it's-
just changed it.
Yeah. like for the better. I would
Yeah.
say like I like
Yeah.
that version a lot better. Like the brotherly love. Like
well, it's like a freaking The Office. Like for example, the freaking Office in the London or the UK
Original
version of
UK
it. Yeah, like if you look at that one, Michael Scott kind of was like a thing, and then Michael Scott in the first season was like a mirrored image of him. But then the second, third, and fourth, and fifth season, like you just start seeing this character development where they're like, we have to make him not just like a person that just kind of sucks. He needs to
a
have
complete
a good
dick.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So I feel like maybe they're doing this with at least like Sung's like personality in
I
these
can
ways.
see that.
You know, they're like
making him more
human-
likable or
Yeah.
appealing to
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
viewers. Yeah.
so. I
It's
don't
for
know.
that reason why I think the anime presents this scene a little
He
bit
does
better,
seem
since
kinda like
shutting
an
out Jinho doesn't
ass
really
a little
seem
bit
like
from
something
the-
Sung would do here.
Yeah,
The
I
other
mean,
texts.
the man literally just gave up a multi-billion-dollar
Yeah.
business opportunity. The least Sung could do in return is provide him a place to stay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got,
Especially
what,
after all that talk
millions
about
of
being
dollars
brothers in
now?
a
Yeah.
restaurant here. Now, when the story goes back to Jinho's father later, despite his wife suggesting he was being a bit too harsh, Mr. Yu fully agreed every choice had responsibilities and consequences. That being the case, this was just the result of Jinho's choice. As frustrated as Mr. Yu seemed though, his wife wasn't so sure he was actually angry. Reason being that, despite all the talk, his expression still looked as if he was pleased in some way.
Mm-hmm.
He was
Yes,
just
he was
doing it
upset since
because it
Jinho
was, like,
rebelled against him, but at
principle.
the same time
Yeah,
he
or
wasn't
something.
unhappy. No, he couldn't help but be a little content with the way Jinho showed conviction towards something he
You
was
were calling
passionate
that the
about.
whole time.
I was like,
So,
just
really,
the fatherly
Mr. Yu
instinct
was
would be
only
like,
upset
you
at
go
Jinho
get your
saying
shit,
no to
buddy.
him
Yeah.
because
You
the
know?
lifestyle he built was no different than the one he had in his business. To him,
Hell yeah.
orders were meant to be followed, and for anyone to say no to them, well, that was unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
That being the case, his reaction to Jinho was essentially the equivalent of him firing an employee.
Yeah.
It was just the natural way to respond for him. The reaction of someone who treated his family the same way he treated a business. It was then that the first symptoms of the eternal
Oh,
slumber
yeah.
would take effect, but rather than talk about that now, I'm gonna save that, the rest of the press conference, Beck sleuthing, the
Ugh.
auction house in the dungeon for another video.
Oh!
Well,
If I continued
dang.
talking about the cut content from all that, then this video would be 40 minutes and I wouldn't be finished
Just
until
do
Saturday.
it!
So expect a part 2 to this episode likely on Friday or Saturday.
Dear
I
God.
do hope you
Well-
enjoyed this one though, as there was certainly quite a lot to talk about. It
Yeah.
might not be focused on Sung, but these scenes definitely serve to develop the world around him. So, let me know what
That was pretty solid, dude.
Yeah.
And I gotta say too, like I understand why he didn't just work on showing stuff from Sung, because like we're here for all the characters, man, and the whole story
Yeah.
and the way that it's told and stuff. And
I feel like the anime does a good job in and of itself showing about Sung. There's
yeah,
a
like
lot
what
of
all he did there.
A lot of the other characters this
Mhm.
season in particularly aren't getting almost any of the spotlight.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And I will say, like, one really funny thing that I was kind of really looking forward to about checking out with Sung is whenever he starts selling, like, whenever he goes to buy the equipment from that store. I don't remember what the store was.
like the
Yeah.
artifacts or whatever.
And then he's like, oh, wait, I can actually trade these for real world money. It's like, I can use this money. It's like, be right back. He just, like, goes to the bathroom, comes back with a shitload of money. So, like, I don't know. I was really looking forward to, like, finding out more about that. I'm really curious how they portrayed that whole experience in, like, the manga and the web novel.
yeah.
I don't know, but I would love to see that as well too. But either way, man, I do feel like this show has a really good, like, watching the anime, the tempo of the show is great, but there's
Yeah.
obviously some stuff where we're like not getting the whole picture of some things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think again, it's just like one of those things, like book versus movie. It's really hard to put everything that's in, like, 600-700 pages into an hour and a half long movie. So
Yeah,
I can
visual
see-
experience.
Yeah. But either way, thank you guys for checking this one out. I hope y'all having a blessed one. If y'all need anything at all, message us, and we will be catching the next solo leveling episode on Saturday on our Patreon and Sunday on our YouTube channel. So stay tuned, homies. And we'll catch y'all then. Friggin' toodles!
Later.
Bye.